Oh my goodness, 3 videos back to back. Either that or you must think I love sitting in this chair with my purple shirt on. This is going to be video 671, and it's going to be focused on something I'm going to call third stage, or the new stage that I'm in. I'd have to preface this by saying that if you don't know, I was diagnosed with blood clots about 4 or 5 months ago, and they totally blame the estrogen. And so, in order to stay alive, I cannot take estrogen. I can't take anything, progesterone, estrogen, or whatnot. So, at least for a year. And then after that, they might slowly introduce something to see if my body can handle it. So, for the last 4 or 5 months, my body has slowly eaten away all of the estrogen in it. I've lost my breasts, gained hair back on my arms, in many respects. And up here, the mental changes have just been. I feel just like a flat line person. I feel like I'm totally flat. I'm a flat person. I'm not 3 dimensional. I just am this cardboard cutout of a person right now. My personality and everything else. Don't feel feminine. Don't feel masculine. I just am. Okay? And so that kind of set the stage for what I'm calling my third, for lack of a better word, my third existence. My first existence on this planet was as a man, was a boy. I was a walking corpse. You know that story. You've been through it. The false self. And then I went through a period of rebirth with my transition, hormones, etc., etc. Had gender reassignment surgery leading up to gender reassignment surgery. My first 2 years of my transition. Real life test, blah, 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 blah. I'm calling that my second birth, my second phase, in which I undid a lot of the first phase, but learned a lot about it. What it maybe would be considered the pupa stage of redevelopment, rebirth, whatnot. And so now I'm in my third stage. And what set my third stage off was having GCS and reaching so many goals that I had as far as transitioning. My third stage was kind of like saying, well, what do I do now? What do I do now? I've transitioned successfully, up for debate. Transitioned successfully. Had my surgery. My body has changed as much as it's going to change, etc., etc., etc. This is as good as it gets, without some major reconstruction work on the old body frame, which I don't think I'm going to do. So in many respects, this is as good as it gets. This is where you're at. Hang on just a second. I'm turning off the fan here. So kind of entering this third stage. Okay, well, what do I do now? I don't have to worry about GCS. I don't have to worry about transitioning. And in many respects, what do I want to do? And that was part of the problem between the second and the third stage. After my surgery, I began to question, my profession, what I was doing as a job, my hobbies. It was like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, and I won't exactly say that my old job was associated with my male self, although it was the job obviously I transitioned over. But it was not something I didn't. I was unhappy doing it, and I was unhappy doing it for over 10 years, and I stuck with it. And in the latter half of those 10 years is when I hit upon the idea of transitioning, following through with it, and I did it, and I had the surgery and everything else. And so, as fate would have it, after 19 years of working for this company, they let me go. I was unhappy. I was a good worker, but I was unhappy. They were unhappy. Whatever. Bow wow. And so being unemployed for a year, it really led me to question a lot of things about not only the first part of my life, but the second part of my life. You know, the first part of my life was up to a certain point, and the dead walking corpse port, which although it was a lot of pain, stress, and frustration, there were parts of my life that weren't that bad. You know, and especially in light of a lot of what we're encountering now with the Black Lives Matter movement, what you would consider to be white privilege. As a boy, I never worried about where my next meal came from. I was never concerned about my dad losing my job. I was never racially profiled. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think now I took for granted that I'm questioning. Okay, but let's keep that out of this discussion for just this discussion. You know, so as the second stage of my life was so much of a rebirth and figuring out, what the little girl in me wanted to do and giving her the opportunity to grow and develop, I kind of hit this third bump in the road. Now I was unemployed and I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do. If I wanted to go back to school and be a nurse, I could be a nurse. If I wanted to go back to school and be a marine biologist, I could be a marine biologist. If I wanted to be an astronaut and I could lose weight, it's a stretch, but SpaceX, if they were hiring and I could lose the weight and I could build up my body, I'd go to another planet. I'd go to this international. You know what I mean? It's just you're presented with a whole bunch of opportunity at once. And then in my case, when I started to pursue some of those opportunities and the rejection letters started to pile up, I went into a bit of a depression and a downward spiral. It didn't help that my estrogen was cut off. Obviously, without health insurance, couldn't go see a doctor, etc., etc., etc. So I kind of hit a bit of a roadblock. And so now I'm in my third stage. I got a job, health insurance. Haven't gotten my card yet. I'm still waiting, but soon. And I'm now asking myself, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? What does Robin want to do? Not necessarily the Robin that was reborn, not the younger little girl who was like the first time, but I'm kind of sitting here going, okay, well, what do I want to do? And part of that therapy, I think, again, I hope to hook up with a therapist once time allows, is exploring some of the things that I didn't get to do as a child. I'm not going to say I'm going to go back and role play myself as a 10-year-old girl. I always wanted to be a brownie. Okay, I'm not going to go buy a brown. I wouldn't fit in a brownie outfit, but I can't be a Girl Scout now. But I'm not going to play with dolls now. But that initial expansion of transition and self-discovery was over. And so now I'm looking at myself going, okay, self, here I am, 48 years old, woman. What do I want to do? In some respects, like a person that's in a relationship, married for 40 years, 20 or 30 years, they get divorced and they're like, well, what do I want to do? I've had, I have so many freedoms now to a degree, to explore. And so I think that's kind of what I said. I think that's kind of why I'm in my third phase. Um, I must say I miss the estrogen. I miss the feeling. I miss the tenderness. I feel like from a therapy, from a counseling point of view, once I see a counselor, I think there's some brick walls. There's some walls up in here that I'm going to need to work through. I'm going to need to work through. because in many regards, I feel like I'm in a safe room right now. I'm in a safe room. I want to explore my sexuality. That opportunity is not presenting itself at all. I want to explore, what type of person am I attracted to? What would I be? Who would I be attracted to? And I think I made a mention video. It was something about a name. What's in a name? You know, um, and I made mention in it for part of my life after my transition. I wanted to go by my middle name, my adopted name, Karen. And when someone was talking to Karen, that cut through my first and second. That cut through uh, probably three lines of defense, three walls that I have put up to deal with this inner woman who hasn't had a chance yet, even at stage 3, hasn't had a chance to explore the world yet. You know, and that's maybe what I'm associating with, as Karen, as being that young, tender, uh, inner child. She's not a child. She's not a girl. She's not a girl. She's a woman. She's a young woman, but she hasn't had that opportunity to live yet. You know, and there's so many facets of that. Like I said, romance, sex, social things, dealing woman to woman. Dealing woman to woman as a woman to man as a woman. All of those things. To me, that's like this phase 3. Okay. And I may be totally deluding myself. Maybe this is again a road that leads forever along the horizon. You'll never reach it. It'll be something to work for. It'll be something to learn towards. But that's kind of what I feel is the next step. And to a certain degree, I feel like I'm not going to get it until I'm back on the hormones, because the estrogen just makes such a difference. Up here. It makes such a difference biologically when your body changes. That up and down with the estrogen. Again, I'm right now. I'm flat. I feel like this two-dimensional person. I'm flat. I hope we'll get through it. And that's kind of where I'm at. That's stage 3. So I'm hoping to see what happens there. And I also want to talk a little bit about a hierarchy that I have in my mind that is totally unfair, but I think exists amongst trans women. And it's a double-edged sword. Are you ready for something that might piss you off? We'll talk about it. I hope I don't lose you. But I will say this is a working theory, and I'm a work in progress. I mean, there's if I was a road construction project, there'd be orange barrels from here to infinity. But I was listening. I listen to a lot. I probably sound like a very judgmental person, but I do a lot of listening. I listen and I nod and I encourage when I can. I keep my mouth shut. But, I feel like definitely there's a hierarchy when you go to a support group, especially. But, there's a hierarchy of trans women, and golly, this is gonna come out to be a poor me video, and it's not. It's not that way. But I have a friend who's married, and their marriage survived their transition. Their spouse stuck with them, and they're intimate, they're good friends, they're lovers, blah blah blah. I mean, it's like the ideal situation. And you know, even in that Camelot, there's problems, and then that's life. There's always things. Things could always be worse. Things could always be better. But, you know, in the way that maybe I feel lonely or feel like I'm always going to be alone, minus my kitty cat behind me. You know, my daughter is going to grow up and move out on her own, and then I'm going to be alone. You know, being in an empty nest is certainly not restricted to transgender people. But, you know, I think about, you know, what are the odds of me finding someone to be in a relationship with? You know, it makes me feel sorry for myself. I'll be honest with you. And talking with them in a therapy group, you know, their biggest concern is the amount of sexual stimulation they get. And I'm like, I'm not on the same level as you. You know, I'm single. I'm seeming perpetually to be single for the rest of my life. I will never have a sexual partner. I mean, just the outlook is grim. You know, and you're coming to a support group meeting because you're not getting as sexual stimulated as you want to, and I'm like, me neither. You know, me neither. You know, so both of us kind of have the same problem, but kind of from a different world. And so I feel like in some regards, when I go to a support group, there's a bit of a hierarchy. You know, um, hierarchy of problems. You know, when you're in your first 2 years of your transition, there's so many things you need help with. You need help with hormones, finding a doctor, getting your letters. How do I change my name? Da 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 da. What looks good on me? Blah 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 blah. You know, and I see a lot of younger, and by younger I mean 20s trans women who, over the course of their initial year, you know, they go from being these stocky, not stocky, but you know, beanpole looking guys, apparently, apparently, you know, at face glance, to these beautiful young ladies, and they carry themselves. They, you know, I mean, golly, like I said, transitioning in your 20s, um, beautiful, you know, and you know, those are the women that, you know, guys flaunt, you know, fight over. Those are the, you know, like I said, it's beautiful. You know, they'll have the opportunity to be that, and it's not an opportunity I'll have, and so that makes me poor me, poor me. But I'm so happy for them that they'll get that opportunity. And so again, I feel like again there's kind of some priorities, and it makes me seem like a fat old fuck who just sits there and grunts. You know, I make the occasional comment and wish them luck, but I'm like, you know, baby, you don't know how good you got it. You know, your first 2 years are gonna be bumpy. Your first 2 years are gonna be bumpy. But the fact that you're single, you're not married, you don't have any kids, you don't have any entanglements, you're in your 20s, you've got access to health care, you're going to go on the ride of your life, and you're going to come out of it being a beautiful looking woman. And I've made mention of this before. Society values beautiful young women. You know, society doesn't value old women. They just don't. Um, you know, these young ladies are probably not going to have any trouble finding somebody, although I've yet to see that happen. Um, you know, so like I said, it seems like there's just this. I'm going to call it a hierarchy, but it doesn't mean one thing is better than another. It's just, you know, I had people when I was unemployed at the support group meeting, you know, try and cheer me up and say, you know, things will look better, da 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 da. And I just sat there and I was like, you know, I'm twice your age. I'll never look as good as you. I'll never be as pretty as you. You're more likely to catch a husband or a wife than I will. And you're telling me to cheer up? You know? Okay. But I don't know. It just something I noticed. It's just something I noticed, and um, there's definitely something to be said if you're in a relationship with someone and that relationship survives. It's definitely a point of dilemma when you're in a marriage and you don't know if it's gonna stay together or if it's gonna survive or if they're gonna love you or whatnot. I mean, it definitely is drama. It's my daughter. You know, but it's another level. It's another plus. It's another part of that hierarchy. But it's hard for you know. There's another trans woman out there who they're they're a college professor, and you know they're set for life. They're not short on money. What hormones didn't give them, they did themselves with surgery. They had a trach shave, hair implants, facial feminization, throat surgery to sound better, boob job. I mean, all these things. I mean, they look like and for them to just say to someone, oh, you got, things will work out. I'm just kind of sitting there going, for you it did. But probably in their Camelot there is some issues too. So, all right, well, I think I've talked myself out of the video, so I'm going to end it. But I apologize if I ticked you off. I didn't mean to, but I just wanted to kind of make a comment kind of on where I am. And I would be curious if in your own transition, if you kind of felt there were stages and what stage you're in. Where are you now in your transition? You know, what does the future hold for you? So, on that note, bye bye. Good luck.